1, go. So, hey guys, KCTCG here, this time with Sebs and Levi.
What's up, guys?
How's
Levi.
everybody doing?
So, we're actually going to be talking about, it's a pretty popular topic, honestly. What is a meta deck, and, like, what is a good player, what is a good deck? So, just to start things off, a meta deck, guys, what do you think is actually considered the definition of meta?
You can go first, Levi.
So, like, just playing card games in general. Going off of meta is obviously, uh, I feel like is a deck that is consistently having an overall winning percentage. So anything, above the 50% mark that is consistently doing well, it's being seen over the general course of whatever set it's viable to.
Yeah,
And
so
within
a
that
high
span,
representation and a high conversion rate for winning.
exactly.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
I definitely I would agree with that. I feel like a meta deck in general, I mean, popularity has a big thing to do with it too. But I feel the win percentage of that deck and how consistent it can be in the game plan that it's trying to do, that's definitely what I would consider a meta deck.
yeah, like honestly, I also see a meta deck as something that the general populace can easily pick up. Not even just talking about like if it's cheap or not, just playing it if it's easy and or easy to understand, and just like Levi was saying, just a high conversion rate into high representation into high conversion rate across multiple platforms, aka in OCG, TCG, like foreign, domestic, anywhere you go, you'll see that kind of deck.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings us to the next point of topic, though. What is considered then a good deck versus a meta deck?
Hmm. Maybe a good deck in this scenario would just be maybe easy to pick up, like kind of how you mentioned earlier, Ken. I feel like any player that can pick up a deck and start not doing well with it, but can understand all the plays of the deck and the intricacies of the deck. Like, if you can do that and the deck can still pull out wins, I mean, I'd probably consider that a good deck. If it's not something that's like, if you're taking it to a tournament and you think you can do okay with it or you feel comfortable with it, then I'd probably consider that a good deck too. Especially
Uh,
more so like on mindset wise, because I know like sometimes it might not be like a quote unquote good deck, but if you play your deck well and you know how to play against
I mean, that
other
would be
players with their
considered more
decks,
towards the player, though, not towards the deck.
right. Yeah, but I still feel like that also helps in the fact of what is a good deck.
True, true, true. What about you,
Yeah.
Levi?
So with a good deck, I feel like it kind of this goes right back to kind of like saying what the meta is one thing I see in Vanguard is definitely consistency. Being able to pick up a combo very easy, keep doing it, and basically rotate that all throughout the game without really not having to do much and getting, the absolute performance out of it. Um, if a deck is able to do basically, search, call, deck thin, any sort of mechanic that's going to put you at an advantage, you're going to be able to perform well with it. A lot of decks are capable of doing that, and that's one of the biggest things. It's just being able to consistently perform and do the most with the minimum.
Yeah, I agree here. Like, a good deck, in my opinion, is a deck that you can consistently do what you want to do.
Right.
However, I still see that sometimes, and this is very like it's a stretch, but there will be times that when you look at a deck and you can deck thin like 10, 20 cards. You can do your combos like multiple times over and over again. However, you cannot close a game. Now, this could be a good deck running that type of engine. However, it can't close the game, meaning it's not really good. Like if you can't win the game, um, but at the same time, like if a deck is able to combo off and just pop off, but it only pops off maybe once or twice in like 10 games, like yeah, that's also not good though. Now what Sebs and Levi here I've mentioned as well, mainly more with Sebs, when a pilot is piloting a deck though, and they understand intricacies of the decks and the nuances of a deck and the opposing deck, now that's a good player, right?
Right. I would probably consider it a good player.
Now, here's the thing. How would you draw the line between someone just playing a good deck and someone being a good player?
Hmm. Good.
Oh, so if I can go first.
Go
Right.
for it.
Um, so one golden rule I have for being a good player versus playing a good deck. So anybody could pick up a good deck and play it, right? And
Mhm.
usually that's what the norm is. You'll pick up a deck. You might not know everything, but you understand the deck and you perform well with it. Now, versus a good player, more so half the battle is literally just understanding everything else, not understanding your own deck. Well, don't get me wrong. Yes, you still know you have to understand how your deck plays, but being a good player is also knowing what threats are out there, what game mechanics are being considered. Like you have to know game state at all times. And this is what I see a lot. And this is how I feel like I could identify a good player versus the average player is a player that understands how to play against the meta versus a player that is playing the meta. If
I
that
mean,
makes
I'll even
sense.
just extend a little bit on what you said. Not even just a player that knows how to play against the meta. It's just a good player is a player that knows how to play against the opposing side currently. Like they can sit down,
Yes.
look at what's happening, like look at what the game plan is, where your opponent is, and immediately have your game plan set. Like here's my rough draft, my rough outline of what I need to have happen for me to have victory. Like
Hmm.
I completely understand, agree with what you're saying here. Like, yeah, a good player understands game state. They understand their deck, but more importantly, also they understand their opponent's deck. They're not just caught with their pants down when their opponent just pops off.
Exactly. And the biggest question I ask, other players is I'll be playing deck A and they'll be playing deck B, and I'll go, yeah, you understand your deck, you understand deck B, but how many times do you sit there during my turn and know exactly what I'm going to do? How many times do you actually think out your opponent's turn with their deck and think,
Realistically,
okay,
the
this
answer
is
is going to
what?
be a zero.
No, I could say I know Sebs.
Hmm.
Me and Sebs have gone back and forth with this. I'll try to outthink his turn, and I know, he's thinking what I'm trying to do, and this is definitely one really well thing to do when you're practicing and when you're preparing for anything. But that is a very good
I
habit
mean,
to kind
if
of
we're
put
gonna go
yourself in.
into trying to outplay your opponent, hell, me like I've done it with you, Levi. I've done it with Sebs. We have literally called each other's play out, saying, "You're gonna do this. You're gonna do this. Don't bullshit me. Just play it."
Exactly.
This is
Yeah.
very true.
I think I mean, for going like based off of a good player, I mean, yeah, like how I'll go into like what Levi said about players knowing what the game plan is. Because if you're a good player, I mean, regardless of the meta, you should have already tested everything you're going to do with your deck, and you should already know what your opponent's deck does and not get caught slipping, you know? You're just
Yeah.
gonna pull up to a tournament and then just like, oh, I don't know what this deck does. And then just sit there and feel bad because you lost 2-0. or 1-0 in Vanguard's case.
Yeah,
Like
like honestly, so here's where I'll just introduce a topic. And guys, if you're listening right now, I know something's gonna pop into your head saying, "Oh, but RNG just won them the game. RNG won me the game, so I don't need to worry." RNG is a topic we will discuss later, in another episode. However, I'm just gonna say this right now. RNG is calcul. It can be calculated. It
yeah,
can be manipulated, and you can work RNG into your favor. Now, yes, there are times when that 1 to 5% chance that your opponent just smacks you across the face with every ounce of RNG they have and just win the game in like seconds. Yeah, that happens. But at the same time, there are cases where you can just prevent that.
yeah, pretty much. But we know that RNG is something like how you said. We'll cover it on a different topic, but everybody knows RNG is part of the game. So I mean, we're kind of hoping that there's no point in having people, go ahead and comment and say,
You
"Oh, but
know
what
people are
about
gonna
RNG
comment
this
about
and
it realistically.
RNG that?" Yeah, it's just we know that it's part of the game. We understand it, but that's RNG. Even if you can sack somebody out every game, if you don't know what you're doing or you're just swinging Vanguard herb derp, point example. Oh, I'm playing Gravidia. Oh, Gravidia swing. Oh, I hit 2 crit on my Vanguard. Okay, GG. Like that doesn't make. I personally don't think that makes you a good player. But if you do it, you do it. Cool. And if you didn't hit the triggers, I mean, you're probably gonna die the next turn for whatever case. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is part of. It's part of the game. It's part of the game.
So,
Yes, but if I could piggyback off that
sure.
idea,
Mm.
um, so and Gravidia is a perfect example. But my next question is now, what is your case? And this is where I'll correlate, being a good player and kind of watching RNG is what is the case when now you're stuck in a mirror match and you are playing Gravidia because Gravidia is a good deck.
I
It,
mean, realistically, if you are playing that type of mirror match, um, and this is once again going back into the realm of understanding the deck,
Yeah.
knowing if you are a good player and you fully
like,
understand your deck, you should also understand how your deck loses. So,
Yes.
in the sense of a mirror match, know what the out is, know what your loss condition is, because your loss condition is the same exact thing as your opponent.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably a big thing for sure. I mean, regardless of like what meta deck you're playing, if you know what your deck does, you know what the opponent's deck does, and you're like, just for that example, if you're using a deck that relies solely on RNG to win, I mean, yeah, it can get you wins because RNG is a factor in the game. But if you're not getting that RNG and you can't take the win out, like how you mentioned earlier, Ken, it's kind of like, what are you doing? And also, too, like, you're not being a good player by knowing you're out if you don't hit your RNG, you know? I
Hmm.
think that's also a big thing for sure.
Like, realistically speaking, just I would just say that for a short end to this RNG discussion, at least, you can actually out a lot of RNG just by preemptively planning ahead for the worst case scenario. Because every worst case scenario, honestly, to a lot of good players is I get sacked out. Because
Yeah.
realistically, guys, right, a good player should not get ever get sacked out. Like if you're put in that position, you probably already were in a losing position to begin with. However, if there was a scenario that you said, you know what, I will only lose to this one thing in his X count deck. If and it's a one of, well, shit. If I let it happen, then it happened. But if I can prevent it, and if I'm not wasting anything by preventing this, then why didn't I?
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
I would have to agree with that.
like, as much as people want to fight it, like, for Vanguard's sake, people are currently bitching about the OT. Well, realistically speaking, um, and this is just me going a little bit off topic, guys. Apologies. Just for example, right? Hitting the OT on Dragon Empire, unless you're a grade 3 or higher, the OT realistically doesn't matter. It, if anything, it's just a glorified critical trigger that had a draw on it.
Yeah, pretty much.
If it's in a grade 3 or higher sense, damn, your opponent just became Overlord for a quick second. Like, honestly.
Yeah, yeah. At
And
that point, it's
then
just
if
like
you go on
feels bad.
Dark States, if they hit it early, damn, now I have to deal with a permanent critical trigger on the Vanguard.
Yeah,
Yes, this is painful. Yes, especially in decks like Bruce and Greedon that can restand the Vanguard and attack multiple times. But at the same time, play around it. You adapt. You reanalyze the situation and you change it to your favor if you can. But
and
if
a
you
good
just sit there and just take it, then that's you, not the OT.
yeah, a good player is gonna know to make that adjustment. A bad player is just gonna think, oh, okay, well, this is pretty hopeless. My opponent hit Dark State's OT, so now I'm just screwed every time his Vanguard attacks. Like, no,
Correct.
like okay, maybe instead I should just take the rear guard attack and maybe two to pass the Vanguard because that's what I can do, and I know I'm not gonna get sacked out. Well,
Because
hopefully
OT's
not get
gone,
sacked
yeah.
out. Yeah,
And
but
then,
that's
like,
part of it.
same with the OT for Lyrical. If they hit it, well, damn, the entire rear guard board has 10k the entire time. Like, once again, you adapt.
Yeah,
So,
if they have rear guards.
yeah, that's how you
Yeah,
adapt.
that's it. Yeah.
So, the other thing would be like, oh, if you hit Stoicheia, well, realistically, no matter what stage in the game, Stoicheia is just draw two, critical heal. Like,
Yeah.
sure. And then, Brancate, most of the time, it's just an over glorified critical trigger. Yes, it gave 100 mil, but in the end, I don't care how big you are, one damage is still one damage. Yes, it doubles the power of everything in the front row, but if they don't have a front row, yeah, it's a critical. Like, what are you gonna do about it? And
Yeah.
like some people might argue, oh, well, what if they hit OT on defensive? Well, realistically, if this is the one turn that you had left to clap your opponent and win the game, and you lose the following turn, you were never in a winning state once again. You were put in a situation where you were in a final push, and it's called final turn for a reason. You win or lose in this turn. There is no, oh, they hit OT, I lost because of that. Like, same could be said for a heal trigger.
Yeah.
And there are way less people complain about 6 damage heals in OT right now.
Yeah, and I
So
mean, as a good player, you can plan around those things, like especially keeping track, like how Levi mentioned earlier. Keeping track of game state is going to be the most important thing, especially if you know, hey, I'm going to go all in on my big turn. Oh wait, my opponent's over trigger isn't out yet. Shit, maybe I might want to reconsider this turn. You know,
mhm,
or oh, my opponent still has four heal triggers left in deck. Oh, he's at five. Um, Maybe I should put all the crit on my Vanguard, or put it on something else, or put it,
yeah.
like at least play around what you think your opponent is going to be able to do if if everything lines up for them. That's going to
So
be
here
the big
becomes
factor.
a popular topic with some people now, and I know this is a question that most of us have been asked sometime in our career, and this is interchangeable within its own phrasing. So is it possible to play a good deck as a bad player and still win? And the reverse, is it possible to play a bad deck, or sorry, yeah, bad deck as a good player and still win?
Hmm. Well, you want to go first, Ken? You want to give your thoughts on that?
So I'll go first on it. So in my opinion, everything is always possible to win. Like, but let's bar RNG for a quick moment here, once again, and
Hmm.
just go based on the player's skill versus a deck's mechanics. So if a deck's ceiling and floor are relatively high and low, respectively, and the player can't grasp the high ceiling, they'll fall to the ground of the low floor of the deck, meaning the skill cap and the maximum amount of plays they can do is really poor. Then they're gonna lose regardless of what happens, and they just completely get destroyed by a player that understands the game state. Now, if a player understands the ceiling and only reach and always reaches the ceiling, then in relative to everybody else, if the ceiling is high enough, then yes, the player will win because they understand the deck, they understand what's going on and how to pull victory away.
Hmm.
And yes, you can't always pull the rabbit out of the hat. Yes, you can't always win even though you hit ceiling. However, just basic game knowledge and basic, I would say probability skills if you are able to hit a deck's ceiling, hell, if you break a hole through that ceiling, holy fucking shit, then you'll most likely win your game.
Yeah.
Levi?
So I could agree. Now, just going from topic one to topic two. So, can a bad player win with a good deck? Yes. Uh, and this kind of like just circles around back to the beginning of our conversation. The whole point of it being a good deck is honestly just understanding a good deck and how it functions. And, as long as that deck can do everything it needs to do, you will have most likely a positive turn, like turnaround. But at the same time, it really depends on the player. If the player just picks up the deck because they see it's doing well, but they don't understand it, they could also, they could not do well at all.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding game state is a huge thing. Now, moving on to the next, where can a good player win with a bad deck? Absolutely. Half of the time, that's why we see these rogue decks, because it's more so the player. The player understands the game so well that they bring in a deck that literally counters the meta, or it'll do something around it, and it's just it was the correct option to pick. Now, it might not be, it might not be a glorified meta deck where it's got something appealing to everyone, but the deck does everything it needed to do, not necessarily saying it's bad, but it did what it had to do, and it was piloted by a good player. So therefore, I think it's a yes to both questions, but I would heavily argue more that a good player with a bad deck will have a more consistent win rate than
Yeah,
a bad player with a good deck.
Mm.
definitely.
Yeah, I think I would probably agree with Levi's sentiment the most, just because, I mean, we've all seen it. The new player comes to the shop or whatever. Hey guys, look, I got the newest hot meta deck. All right, cool. I'll play your brand new meta deck with my rinky dink little whatever deck, and then you still manage to win because they just don't understand the interactions. It's like the better player, especially, I mean, in this game, should always win. Obviously, there are cases where the latter happens or whatever. But I do think that both players could get it. Overall, the better player will take it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And just adding on to this, like I think we can add on to more a little bit about this, like just talking about just away from the player now, more towards the deck.
Mm.
Like people need to understand that a good deck is only good if you understand it. If you realistically sit down, pick up, I don't care how many cards per game, but you pick up every single card and you read every single card. I don't care how long the paragraph is, I don't care how short the sentence is. It could be 2 lines, it could be, 20 lines. I don't know how long some Yu-Gi-Oh cards are now. I think they are like an essay. But
Pretty much.
if you read every little card, every little detail of a card, and you fully understand what goes with what combos with what, and if interaction A goes to interaction B, like as long as you understand these nuances in your own deck, you already have a higher chance of winning if compared to someone that just picked up a good deck because they saw it win 20 tournaments in a row. Like like each of us here have a main in every single format. Like back then, I was considered a Grand Blue main. Levi, I knew you for Narukami. And then Sebs, like I met you playing Night Rose.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Like I knew you were an Aquaforce player, but I had met you playing Night Rose, and you understood
Yes.
the nuances, even though it wasn't your like, if you want to call it your clan.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's the thing. Like people that didn't understand it were writing. I believe at the time it was Gear Chronicle or it was Shadow Paladin, they didn't want to understand what this janky ass Grand Blue deck was doing in these top tables. And
Yeah, and it was just one of those things where people, oh, this seems like very convoluted and hard. It's like,
yeah,
yeah, but if you play it right, then technically these other factors shouldn't matter.
yeah, like you get
Even the
heavily
RNG.
rewarded for knowing what your deck does.
Yeah.
And it's the same said for like just for an example, the most recent big tournament that we all three of us would ever go to was when I believe it was the ARG or PPG tournament in San Jose. It was a
I think
while
so.
back, but
Yeah, probably.
like this is a prime example of what happened. I was playing a rogue deck and I made it to top eight. And
Y-
it wasn't the
Yep,
Night
I
Rose
could
day. It
say
wasn't the Night Rose day. It was the I was day one. I was playing the
it was
Joker.
day one. Yeah, yeah.
Day one, I was playing Messiah. But people did not understand the deck. They were only playing around Dominate. They were only playing around ZTB, and that was the meta. But I brought in a deck that I understood, that I liked, and I made it to top eight. And then day two, same thing. Everyone was riding ZTB, and I'm the only person with Night Rose on top eight.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
this goes to your old rinky dinky deck with the hot new meta. Like, ZTB was the hot new meta, Night Rose was old and dusty. There was literally no new support. But
No.
why am I still here then? Why am I in top eight?
And again, yeah, that adds on to just being a good player overall and knowing what you can do against those decks and seeing your line of plays and knowing their line of plays.
Yeah.
And I mean, in Vanguard particularly, I mean, every card game has their own resources,
hmm
but I guess in Vanguard it kind of is different because we need damage to use counterblast, which is the one of our mechanics in the
Yeah,
game.
we had to pay pretty much take damage to be able to use our damage that we took to use our abilities.
Right, and those abilities, I mean, again, if you know how many counterblasts or how many abilities your opponent can do with one or two, whatever, that's gonna make a huge difference rather than I'm gonna attack your rear guard versus I'm gonna attack your vanguard. Like or
hmm
even the almighty, oh, I rode up, okay, pass. It's like
Oh
go ahead. Oh, you're
no,
not gonna
I
attack?
really
No.
hate these days.
I love it. It's good. I don't mind playing stalemate. It's easy.
But that's just the thing, like the hallmark of a good player is very, very obvious to spot once you know what a good player is. However, I know there's gonna be people that are gonna confuse a good player versus the good deck. Like,
Hmm.
and that's the biggest thing. Like, people I want, uh, at least I want to get the point across is that a good deck isn't just, oh, this is what's meta. A good deck, just like as Levi said in the very beginning, should be something that is consistent and is able to uh, bend the favor of the game towards you. Like memento, tempo, everything towards you. Like you're able to just consistently do play after play after play, combo after combo. That is, in my opinion, a hallmark of a good deck.
Hmm.
Like Levi,
Yeah,
what do you
no,
think is a
I'd
good
agree with that.
deck, or at least signs of a good deck?
It basically it just comes right down to that. Like I really do believe consistency is key, and being able to do the most with the minimum will always put you on top. So seeing these decks that do that, that's what's gonna make it a good deck.
Don't forget too in Vanguard. I mean, in most games, they got the classic phrase. Deck thinning is deck winning,
Mm-hmm.
which in Vanguard will really make or break your deck. So if your deck can deck thin, if your deck can superior call, if your deck can revive things, if it can stack, there's a lot of good things that they try to mix up as far as like abilities in the game. But there's always those one or two decks that can just kind of do it all, and those
Yeah.
alone
I
they'll be meta,
mean,
they'll be top.
like, but here's the thing, right? And I'm just gonna throw something out here because it combined what you're talking about right now. but it was never fully recognized as a meta deck. And this is OTT. So back then,
Yeah.
it was a deck that would. I mean, yes, Battle Sisters were reigning supreme, also because it was a deck that drew like 20 cards in the turn. But
And early aggroed you super hard.
correct. However, apart from before OTT showed its face, no one picked up the deck, even though it was able to stack legally. It was able to deck thin through drawing, but no one wanted to play it.
Yeah.
Like, would you consider a deck that would stack legally plus drawing cards a good deck? And would this apply to OTT? Pre-Battle
And
Sisters.
see, I would apply that. Yes, it is a good deck, but this is where popularity also comes in. If a deck does not appeal to the norm or the
Populous.
average of the exactly, people will not be confident in picking it up. But that's it's I feel like we're running into circles, but that's
It's
exactly
it's
where
it's the
good
pitfall
players
of
come.
like good deck, good player, and meta. Like that's what I want to like get clear up though, because let's be honest, right? Without the definition or without clearing up the air about these three topics, people are always gonna link A to B to C. They're never gonna separate the three. Like a good player is pilot's a good deck, and then just because those two are together, that's meta. Like
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be an example myself. Uh, I believe I'm a good player, but I do not. I normally, at least, do not play meta, and most of the time, my decks are considered bad. However, if I'm topping multiple times, like people understand that okay, maybe I can't take the deck for granted as well because I'm doing the same play over and over again, and it's working, but people
Yeah,
can't answer it.
that's kind of what I brought up earlier too. That's why I said like for me, I mean, also adding into the good deck is it's still the player again too. If you understand what you're doing, and people don't get it, it's just something that like you're gonna get steamrolled over. And if they don't want to take the time to even consider like, oh, hey, this deck, yeah, it didn't get support for 2 3 months. Oh, but it can still kind of compete, and the person who's playing it is actually a very good, consistent player. You probably want to look out for that, and you better believe that you could still lose to that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Like realistically speaking, right? Like, and this is the pitfall of once again this conversation. But I mean, we have to answer this eventually, which is there are people that play good decks and they're meta decks, but they're bad players,
Yeah.
and they spread the word that this deck is good. And when other people try to play it, they fail, and they blame it on themselves, saying, "Oh, you know, this," or they blame it on the deck, saying, "Oh, I don't like this deck. It
Yeah.
sucks." And then sometimes it's not the deck. Sometimes it's the player, and then sometimes it is actually the deck, not the player. Like,
Yeah, like I
just
kind
an
of want
example is just like Thegria.
to. Right, right.
Like I can have the perfect game flow of the deck that it wants, and I can never close a game. I can
Right.
always do my combo, but not close the game. And that just means that I'm a good player, that I'm able to do what it wants. But the deck isn't good because they can't end the game.
Right. I think I mean like this is kind of like an example I'm like trying to think of right now, right? Back in G era, before we had like being
Zeroths?
able to stride up, right? It's kind of something like yeah, a little off topic, like I'm trying to think. We had like 7C's grade one rush, right? So it changed like how you picked out who the good players were. I could give a grade one rush deck to somebody, and they probably would look at it and be like, "This deck is bad because there's no grade threes or grade twos. What am I doing?" And it's like, yeah, like you think that way because you don't understand what's going on. And other people would say, "Okay, well, I can counter it with XYZ card." And I think like even for Yu-Gi-Oh too, like I know a lot of players see broken cards and their first thought is, "Oh shit, I can't fight against this because this or that." A good player is gonna look through their card pool of thousands of cards and find, "Hey, there's this one interaction that I can do with this specific card to completely destroy that deck. I'll just do that."
Yeah, like realistically speaking, and the Yu-Gi-Oh is a very good a good example. Like for a while, people were quaking with what meta decks were doing, and they printed out a deck called Funderies.
Mm.
People did not want to play that deck because they saw zero capability in it. There was only one play in the beginning, which was summoning Wind Barrier Statue and telling your opponent, don't play the game.
Yeah.
And then people started realizing, wait, this deck does that? Wait, I can run D Shifter? Wait, this deck is just insane. I can just stop every meta deck and just tell you to stop playing the game and die.
Yeah.
Like people once they got smacked by it, they started buying it.
Yeah.
But
And the good
like
players will find those. They'll find
yeah,
those decks that they're able to use, you know?
like and then the average Joe or the person that thought I'm gonna throw money in this game and make it work just said, "Damn, my investment just turned to shit."
Yeah.
Like, and that's the thing too, right? Like this game, at least for the one that we play in common, Vanguard, you can throw money in all you want, right? But it doesn't make it a good deck.
Yeah. Makes your deck shiny.
I mean, not even that. One of like I believe Inlet's like 25 right now.
Oh yeah. It feels bad, man. A ban list coming soon. We'll see what happens.
But yeah, like that's the thing. Like good players will always find a way to circumvent your amazing deck that you just played. And
Exactly.
there are times that either a stubborn bad player can argue, "Oh, well, I'll just do this, I'll just do this." But when they're backed into the corner, they shut down and say, "I'm not going to play you anymore." Or in the case that we do get to play that player and, beat them, how many times have they told you, "Oh, I blame RNG because of the loss"?
Yeah, that's always a cute little John that they throw out.
Like I think that happened to you too, Levi, right? Like you can
It,
show a
I
player
think
up.
it's happened plenty of times, but I think one thing I want to take away from that is, you know, one thing, and I've seen it. It's a lot rarer than having a salty John, but is players, and this is gonna go back to what you were saying about, a bad player doing bad with a good deck and kind of giving it, you know, a bad rep. Is the bad player has to understand also what they did wrong. If they don't understand that key element right there, they're not going to get any better.
I
But
mean,
half
yeah.
half the battle to getting better is understanding what you did wrong.
Yep.
And realistically speaking, and this speaks volumes to just the people that are listening to this. I'm sorry if you feel called out, but honestly, we probably are calling you out because you don't want to acknowledge that you did bad, but you're losing anyways, and you don't want to ask the person that beat you, "Hey, where'd I lose?"
Yep.
Like, we said this, I believe, last week's episode of what is, how to prepare for things. Part of that is understanding that if you got bodied, learn from it. Don't just run away from it. Because if you learn from it, then you have a better chance of doing better the next time.
Yeah, and I feel like going to like good players and good decks probably. I mean, I know I keep saying like there's a lot of big things that really add on to it, but being able to have your mindset clear and understand why or how or even like the plays that you go for, if you have a clear mindset, your play should be good. And if you weren't thinking it all the way through and you might have thought, oh, I could lose this turn or next turn or whatever, I mean, you're just gonna keep taking L's. But a lose is not a bad thing. And I think there's too many players that, regardless of good or bad deck, have that mentality of like, oh, I lost. Okay, well, there's nothing to gain from this. Like, no, you lost. You should be able to, even if it feels weird or whatever for you, ask your opponent, like how you mentioned, Ken. Hey, why did I lose? Where did I lose? Because a good player will tell you where you lost.
And a good player will also admit, honestly, you weren't until I hit this OT.
Yeah, that too.
Like, that's the thing. Like, also a good player is able to humble themselves, realizing that, honestly, I only won because of this.
Yeah.
And some players will not understand that. But that's the thing. Like, I could pick up any deck right now in standard format, and I can do decently well. Yes, some decks are really hard to play really well, but as a player that understands everything in the nuances of most decks because of my occupation, I'm able to do really well because of just understanding it. But at the same time, if I just threw a random deck to someone because, oh, they saw me do well with it and they try to pick it up, if it's not I do one thing and the deck autopilots itself, well, they might just crash and burn.
Yeah.
And that's just the thing too. Like, I think that people need to stop trying to rely on that crutch of finding that next autoplay deck.
Yeah, because I mean, it's like how we mentioned, a meta deck will only get you so far. Sure, you can if you know all the plays, cool. I mean, that's just like in fighting games, right?
Hmm.
Players see a new character. Oh, this character's busted. I'm gonna learn all these combos, and then you proceed to go into a tournament, and all you know is your own character, and then you just get bodied. So it's like, what are you doing? You know?
Like, Levi, what do you think about this entire thing so far?
Yeah, like I definitely feel like no good player should rely on the actual deck they're playing. Like you shouldn't be able to rely on Zach. You shouldn't be able to rely on OT. Like you should be winning due to how you control the deck, how like what the purpose of the deck is. You shouldn't be leaning on just simple like go arounds. But I think with more cards, with more card pull, um, it'll definitely it'll definitely bring out more players just because now we get to experience more and we get to theory craft more with our decks. That's one thing I'm looking forward to is the game will only get better over time.
Yes, like, realistically speaking, current state of Vanguard is still in shambles. We are, I believe, 1 year into the new format, and people are just now starting to get around it. Unfortunately, they have to pay the buy-in cost, which is a big, big turnoff for people. They really don't want to pay in that buy-in cost of, buying their fresh new deck. But realistically speaking, like, yeah, just like you said, they shouldn't rely on that crutch. If you find a deck that suits you, even if it doesn't come with an autoplay button, but it suits you, then pick it up, play it. Because more than likely, if you like it and you understand it, you'll probably win more than, some random John that doesn't understand his own deck and
Yeah.
constantly loses, but he only knows how to pick up the meta deck no matter how much he needs to pay.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, realistically speaking, like, I think that is the biggest thing for today's topic is just no matter what happens, like, keep playing with what you want, how you like it. Yes, there might be some changes you need to do, and that's when you ask the good players or the better players than you, like, hey, can you take a look and help me out with this? But the biggest thing is don't just default to what everyone else is playing. Like, if you want to play the meta, then play the meta. But if you want to play what's, let's say for example, you really want to play Ava, then you play Ava, make her work.
I mean,
Yeah.
good luck, but yeah. That deck's so bad. But hey, yeah, if you're comfortable with it and you can try and make it work, then hey, more power to you. And if you're getting wins with it, and again, I think some people really underestimate themselves when they're doing well with the deck, and then they decide to go to a big tournament, and what they do is pick up a meta deck, and when they pick up the meta deck, they do even worse than they would have with their actual deck that they're used to playing. It's, a lot of big things that contribute to that.
So Levi, anything else you want to add on to this?
Nope. I think we covered most of the bases for a good player.
So yeah, pretty much. Oh, I mean, also covering a good player just means that we covered a bad player too. Like if we describe someone that's not you, unfortunately, it might mean you're a bad player.
Man, now I feel called out.
We're not saying that you
Oh,
suck. We're saying that you
oh.
can get better. That's what's happening.
Yeah, Levi.
Yeah. No, I guess
Nah, dude, I know you,
the
and
last.
I believe you have also topped. Also with the same team as Sebs, right?
Have we ever played on the same team, Levi?
No,
Like
I don't like
maybe like
subs.
once.
I won't play with them.
Ooh, ooh,
No, he
Um.
doesn't like playing with me because he just loses to me all the time, so it doesn't matter.
Uh.
ooh, yikes.
Okay. All right. Now
Yeah.
we're getting to. Okay. You want to?
I mean, you just lost
Hey,
yesterday. You
but
kept taking
Levi,
L's
Levi,
yesterday. What are you
have
talking
you
about?
just so that people know who you are at least. You are the leader slash owner of Team LEVIathan, as well as what big accomplishments are your accolades for at least your career in Vanguard?
Having. Well, thank you. But yes, I am the team owner and I guess the CEO of Leviathan. Um, pun is fully intended in the name. Um, but uh, going over, accomplishments is, really what I could say is this is funny. Being a player out of SoCal, and fortunately being SoCal, we have had more events than other uh, cities and states. Luckily, I've had several ARG tops. Rip ARG. I've had several PPG tops. Um, I've had, uh, unfortunately, the only top I've actually had in Bushy Road is in Texas. Um, but other than that,
I mean,
the
but it just
biggest
means that
thing
you're
I
not a
could,
slack of a player. Like a person that plays in the competitive scene that let's say they're listening and they think they're competitive, right? They've already heard of PPG, they know of PPG, they know of ARG, and they know BCSs, they know Springfest. They're not players that just think, oh, you're just spouting names. Like I don't know what you're talking about. Like a player that knows these competitive aspects will understand that honestly the difficulty in actually getting to a top of one of these big tournaments because I believe most of them are, if not all of them, are at least 8 round tournament.
yeah, I
So
could say most BCSs and Springfest, those are definitely going to be your longer Swiss rounds. ARG, and Ken, you brought it up earlier. Our trip back to San Jose, I
that
want to say it was
was
2019.
yeah, 2019 I
Oh,
believe. No, no,
the
2018,
only
2018.
I just remember it was the last set of G right before we got Bermuda. Bermuda was not out. We didn't get that last Ange set,
Yeah, and
but
V wasn't sorry. COVID hit us when V was on its tail end. So I want to give it like 2 years before that. So 2018.
That sounds
yeah,
about right. I feel like COVID stopped everything for working forever. So
Yeah, I believe 2020 to 2022.
yeah.
But yeah,
But
like roughly, yeah, ARG go on.
going like, I felt like that was a very competitive time for Vanguard, especially with, ARGs happening in Vegas all the time, and then we had them going on in Northern California. And I remember going to that San Jose event, and there's roughly around 120 competitors, and it was, I believe, 7 or 8 round Swiss before cut to top eight, and we were there. I got to find the picture, but I think we have a picture of
All
day
eight of
one
us.
where we topped, and that was going. And yeah, I'm gonna give Ken the benefit of doubt, but day two, this poor man, it was literally the meme of the girl on the couch. This man topped with
Night
Night
Rose.
Rose with 7 other chrono jets. So um that was definitely a day two experience. But um yeah, no, I think one major thing that helps players is just going to events, just getting that experience, because you'll learn a lot. You can go to locals, you can go and play people, but usually what happens at locals is you keep playing the same people, so you get accustomed to a certain play style. The best way, I remember, and hopefully it'll come back with them announcing shop challenges again, but one great way that we used to practice is just going to as many shop challenges as possible. I think in 1 year of Vanguard, I went to maybe
I mean,
eight
I'm
to
pretty
eight to
sure you've
ten different
seen
locals.
like I'm pretty sure you've seen like all five of my certificates from Chop Challenges.
Yeah, okay, Mister Five. I only got like three, um, but that those are, I think those shop challenges are really fun little tournaments that definitely drive out that competitive aspect, and that's where you'll see, that's where you'll see good players, because obviously who doesn't want a 2 round buy that's going to bump up your numbers.
I mean,
So
Exactly.
realistically,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's just a big thing of just players need to understand this. So, in the sense of Vanguard, at least right now, back to what Levi's talking about, shop challenges. When we're playing this game that, unfortunately, is a best of one, uh, people need to grasp this concept first and foremost. But whenever you're playing in a big tournament like this, that everyone wants to, like Levi said, get that 2 round bye and just be the competitive ones. If you are a player that wants to get better, but you're ashamed or you don't want to lose, like you obviously just don't want that L in your record, go to these events. Go to the shop challenges where at that shop, if they're considered locals there, they all fear player A, B, or C. Like, you as a player, hope that when they say round one, round two, or round eight is up, your name is next to that feared player because you get to play them, you get to learn from them.
Hmm.
Now, if they're a complete asshole, then I'm sorry, nothing you can do, right?
Yeah.
But most of the time, the player will try to teach you, like, oh yeah, this is where you went wrong, this is what you should do. And, like, just, it all circles back once again. Like, yes, we're talking less about just the deck and more about the player now. But, uh, long story short, it's just, as the player, know what the shortcomings of everything is, know where you lost, if it's you that lost, or if it's the deck that lost. Understand this, because if it's the deck that lost, is it changes you need to make? Or is it just you as a player, do you need to play differently? And same could be said for the other way around. Like if you're winning, but you only win because of triggers, or you're winning and you're winning only because, situation A happens in your deck, then you might want to look at it. Like, don't be stuck up in your ways that, oh, just because you won, you are good for the rest of the time you're gonna play the deck.
Yeah,
Yeah, but that's what pretty much like a good round off.
a good way to end it. So I mean, like,
Yeah.
yeah, if we're gonna just like closing thoughts on it. So being meta, being meta doesn't always make you good, but also playing meta, like, I mean, practicing against meta will make you good. If
Hmm.
you just play meta and you're not familiar with the other stuff, you're not going to be as good as you think you are. And also, if you're just trying to force a win, again, you're probably not going to get the win you want. So yeah, that's probably just my closing thoughts.
Levi, any for you?
I think I think you guys bring both good reasons, especially get that practice in, definitely look at all options. And I don't think we brought this up in specifically, but we did mention it is and I think Sebs, you brought this up, and this is something I see a lot happen is a lot of players will just give up or not try after, there's a really big play that's done, or, if they get stacked to 5 on grade 2, um, you definitely don't have confidence in your plays and don't give up. Because if you don't learn how to get out of those situations, you're never going to get out of them.
Yeah,
So
like it's
it's
growing.
definitely, yeah, it's growing, get the practice in. If you do care about the game, definitely put the time, and you'll see a difference. And don't be afraid to be wrong. Reach out, find other players, ask their opinions, get, doesn't mean you have to believe everyone's opinions, but get an understanding of what other people think. Get an understanding of what, goes through someone else's head while they're playing,
I mean,
because it'll
I'm gonna
definitely.
just piggyback off that real fast. When you said you don't have to necessarily believe in what they're saying or listen to. Yes and no, because don't. I'm just saying the no part because if you're stubborn to not want to listen to someone, and you think that your way is always right, and you're just listening to someone just to get an input of what they said, don't just have it go in one ear out the other. Like, at least pay attention to what they're saying and how they're saying it, because what if they're right? What if you're actually wrong? Like, don't just throw it away because you want to keep your ego intact.
Yeah. I agree, but I didn't mean it like that. Obviously,
I'm just throwing it in there so people don't just use that as an excuse to be like, "Oh, you said it, so I'm just gonna ignore it now."
got it. But no, what I mean by like not listening is obviously when the obvious comes into place and it's
uh, you cut off
you're
for a
at
quick
5
second.
damage. Oh, I'm sorry. You know, going in and you know basically obviously knowing when something is wrong, eh, when someone is saying something like, I guess the best example would be I'm at 5 damage, I have 10 cards in hand, and my opponent's attacking. I'm going to no guard because I believe there's a heal on top of my deck,
Yeah.
which I've seen Sebs do.
I do it all the time. It's easy. It's not me stacking. Well, at least you didn't see me stacking, so it doesn't matter.
No, we
Hey,
just watched you do it, and
you're only cheating if you're caught.
Exactly. What
oh
the
god, that's a different topic.
Yeah, different topic. No cheating over here. We've seen some shitty cheaters, but yeah,
I
different
mean,
discussion, different
when I
discussion.
was judging, I would be trained to catch cheaters.
There's some pretty bad ones. Some pretty bad ones out there, especially in Vanguard.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
But that'll be a topic for
But
another time.
I guess just finishing it up is definitely absorb what's around you. because there are good and bad things, and you need to know the difference between both, and it'll make you a better player in understanding.
So that is it for today's video. Next week, I believe it's a proper time to start saying what is, pretty much uh what is necessary to put in your deck. So TLDR, next week we'll probably be talking about deck building, um, how to build your deck. Uh, I mean, we're not gonna give you the formula. We're gonna give you just kind of hints, helpful little tidbits, what you should want, what you do want, and yeah, just go from there. So thank you
Yep, yep.
guys, and thank you for listening. Once again, KCTG with Levi and Sebs.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for
All right,
listening.
bye guys.
Thank you. Bye.